So the last time I talked about The Weeknd was when he released his Save Your Tears remix with Ariana Grande. And if you watch that video, you'll know damn well how much I hated that remix. Loved Save Your Tears, but I did not like that remix. No fault to both artists. They're both really talented artists, especially The Weeknd, who is the subject of today's review. It's one of those songs to me that really didn't feel like it needed to exist. Which is kind of a harsh critique when you think about it, but really, this song didn't need to exist. Especially with someone like The Weeknd, who likes to get very thematic with his albums. Something I also enjoy from The Weeknd whenever he gives us new music is he always tends to do something different. Something he didn't do at all before on his previous album. Usually he'll keep the sound the same. He always surprises you with the next album he's going to release. But with that said, his latest outing does not do that for me. Dawn FM is the 5th studio album released by Canadian R&B artist The Weeknd. When I found out this album was being released, I wasn't exactly blown away because I wouldn't consider myself a massive Weeknd fan, even after I loved albums like After Hours and Beauty Behind the Madness. But I was excited to see what The Weeknd was going to offer on his newest project. This album took a few listens before I could give an accurate opinion on it, which was hard to say considering that I really wanted to like this album. I really did. There were a great many times where I listened to this album and I danced to it as if I was my grandfather. But this album really does not resonate with me at all. To say this album sucked would be wrong, because it was a good album. I thought it was good. But compared to other releases he's put out in the past, this was very lackluster, and in my opinion, the weakest of his 5 albums. To start, Gasoline was a very weird song to start out with. I don't understand why The Weeknd is trying to do that, 80s rock artist sound, the British rockers. I don't understand why he chooses to do that. I found the hook very catchy on Gasoline, but I didn't think him going, "It's fun, mama," again. It was nothing that made me oh yeah, I totally gotta go back and listen to this. In fact, I would say there were a good amount of times I did feel like I was listening to After Hours too, because it feels a lot like that's what he's trying to do here. I think with After Hours, he really found himself specifically in a sound that works for him. And some of the stuff on here really does feel like a sequel to After Hours, because a lot of the time he's talking about getting over some of the feelings he felt that he speaks about on After Hours. I Heard You're Married is, to me, a prime example of that, because he sits on the song and we see him broken on something like Save Your Tears, where he's like, "I saw you in the club and you're now with this, and the second you even lay eyes on me, you have to leave." Now he's reflecting on a love that he had in the past and really begins to, come to terms that his life is kind of like a tragedy almost, but has learned to accept it rather than reject it. It's themes like this that get noticed towards the end of the album. The first half of the album really just feels like a lot of sound. Something that'll hop on the pop charts, like Take My Breath, which was another really catchy song, but, nothing really felt too deep here. Great music and something I could certainly tap my foot to, or, two-step to in my kitchen. I also wasn't sure about the radio motif. It was interesting to hear air checks from Jim Carrey as the radio host on Dawn FM. I thought that was actually really interesting, and he does a really good job being that omnipresent sort of radio host, being kind of like your guide through The Weeknd's personal radio channel. I will say, though, I do enjoy the outro track, which is weird because I actually didn't expect myself to put this on our recommendations list, too. This was the part that made me go back and listen a few more times, because after listening to the whole album, I was like, I'm not going to listen to this again, and then I heard this super deep outro track with Jim Carrey, and it made me want to go back. Still, though, this album really doesn't do it for me the same way his previous albums did. And while I think it is definitely something worth checking out, you're not losing any sleep when missing Dawn FM. It's a great album to help you go to sleep, but that's really the best I can do for you. So it's with a heavy head that I'm giving Dawn FM 2 out of 5 scratches. I honestly thought this was a good album. I did enjoy listening to some of the songs, and I did enjoy some of the concepts he introduces on here. But this album really didn't do it for me. Certainly something I'll go pick up at the store, like on vinyl, just to also say that I have it. But I honestly think that whether you're a fan of The Weeknd or not, this album isn't going to do it for you the same way that his previous projects did. And honestly, I am not afraid to say you could skip this one. But if you still enjoy the concepts that The Weeknd delivers on his projects, regardless of how it resonates in the end, I certainly suggest taking a listen to this album. But beyond that, you're really not missing much on Dawn FM.